Hello, and welcome to Sitter's Baked Goods. Today we're going to be making Razzel Berry Jam. This is a mixed berry jam between strawberry, blackberry, and raspberry. It's a very fun recipe and a very simple recipe, and I use it for Hungarian shortbread, filling some cakes, custom cakes, or birthday cakes, things like that. It's very fun to make. So let's get into it. So I have my frozen berries here. It's 700 grams strawberries, 350 blackberries, and 350 raspberries. So make sure that you get that right. Easy way to remember that and to change the recipe is 2 parts strawberries, 1 part raspberries, 1 part blackberry, and then you just change it to however you want. Just remember to change the amount of sugar. I always tell people this, for making jams and things that aren't really healthy for you, I suggest going as unhealthy as possible that makes the best flavor come out, and if you want to be healthy, just use less of it. Because what will end up happening most of the time is if you make a jam that's not as tasty, you'll just use more of the jam and then just be as unhealthy as if you just put the same amount of sugar in. So it's up to you depending on what you want to do to change this, but I say stick with this correct amount of sugar. And let's get that in. I let the berries warm up overnight, so that's why they're semi-thawed. Depending on how thawed your berries are, or if you're using fresh berries, the sugar will take some time to draw out those juices. So however long it takes, once you can mix it up into a semi-liquid form, that's when you're gonna start to cook. But before we all do that, we gotta make sure we add in our lemon juice. It should take about half an hour for all the juices to come out, since my berries are semi-thawed, but it's all up to you. If you're using fresh berries, it could take 10 minutes. If you're using fully frozen berries, it could take an hour, 2 hours. So make sure you gauge it to your circumstance and make sure that it's nice and mixed up before you start blending anything. Once you can mix the sugar in, all you need to do is blend it up. While you're blending this, turn your boiling water on so that you can sanitize your jars. Once you're done sanitizing your jars, we'll start heating this up and getting this going. So we'll come back when that water is boiling. Once your water starts boiling, put your jars in. Make sure that your jars spend 30 seconds on one side and 30 seconds on the other. That makes sure everything dies, and we'll make sure that your jar is nicely sanitized. Once you finish all the jars, you have to do the lids. For these types of lids, make sure that the rubber O-ring is all nice and good, no damages in it. If any of this is damaged, it won't seal properly and your jam will go bad a lot quicker. So just throw them all in. Make sure all of them are covered by the water and do the same thing as you did with your jars. Once you get to a boil like this, add your pectin in. Make sure you get all of it in there. Once it gets back to a boil, take it off the heat, and then you can scrape off all the bubbles. You can see it's boiling now, so make sure you take it off the heat right away. Turn off your heat, and we'll scrape off those bubbles. We'll take this out, get it away, and we'll scrape off the bubbles. This is mainly for looks and to make sure that each jar is filled properly. If all these bubbles got into one jar and it was like a 250 ml, it'd be more like 200 mils because there'd be so much air in there as well. So make sure you take this out if you're selling it to customers or giving it out as a gift. But these bubbles are still jam, So you can still use it, just use it at home or in your own baked goods, things like that. It'd be perfect for filling because it would be nice and light and still have that strong flavor. The reason why we go with strawberries, raspberries, and blackberries is you get that nice sweetness from the strawberries, which is the main flavor that comes through, but with a nice tangy taste from the blackberries. The raspberry is the nice in-between that levels it out to make sure it's not too sweet and it makes it not too sour. If you went with only blackberries and strawberries, it'd be too sour. If you went with only raspberries and strawberries, it'd be too sweet. So you have to play around and make sure that it balances it out. Don't be stingy. Make sure you take off a ton of bubbles, but only take off until it's reasonable. Once you get down to the bottom, there's gonna be not so much bubbles, but you'll be taking off a lot of jam. And there's no reason to take off a ton of jam, but you need to get rid of most of the jam. You can start to see over here, there's no bubbles. This is an acceptable amount. Maybe take off a little bit more. But if you take any more than this, you'll start just taking jam and you'll start running out of jam for your jars. So you do take a lot off. It's still usable though. Like I said, use it at home on your toast, or if you want to fill a cake or put it in that Hungarian shortbread. This still can be used for that. But for the jars itself, it makes it look uglier, and we'll make sure that it's fully filled when you take this up. So I'm going to just put this off to the side and then fill the jars. Depending on how quick you are, these jars might be too hot to hold. They're still good for me, so you can just grab a ladle and scoop. But if they are too hot to grab, just put this as close as possible and scoop like this so you don't spill everywhere. Be very careful with this. This is molten hot and is sugar, so it's going to stick to your skin and cause severe damage. It will stick and then peel your skin away, so be very, very careful with this. You need to fill this slightly more than you want, because as this cools down, it shrinks just a little bit to create that vacuum that seals your jar. So if you fill to where you want, say this rim, and it cools down, it might get down to here and look small, and your customers will be really mad at you for not giving them the correct amount. So make sure you slightly overfill it. Because it's very hot, it's very hard to tighten the lid fully. So what I like to do is use warm water to cool it down so that I can tighten it by hand, while still not going too cold, which could shatter the glass. So this is how I do it. The added benefit of doing that is if you've spilt any jam, you can wash that off at the same time, and you can do 2 jobs at once. Now that they're all washed, I'm going to let them cool down to room temperature before putting them into the fridge to set. If you put them into the fridge while they're still hot, all it's going to do is bring up the heat in your fridge and make everything else in your fridge go bad, and it doesn't really help the jam too much. So you might as well leave it on the counter till it's room temperature, then put it in the fridge. After about 10 minutes, I'm going to tighten the lids, and about 30 minutes for the bigger ones. you have to tighten them again because as they cool down, the metal shrinks and isn't fully on to where it should be. And if you don't have that fully sealed, then your jam will go bad quicker. Now this jam looks very similar to raspberry, so you gotta make sure that you label this or you're going to mix it up, and they don't taste the same. So if you give out a raspberry and they really enjoy it and they come back again and then get the real raspberry, then they'll be like, oh, you've made your product worse, and they won't want to come back after that. And vice versa, if they wanted raspberry and you give them raspberry, they'll think it's too sour and go, this isn't raspberry, this is awful. So keep that in mind when you're making this specific jam. If you've liked this video, please like and subscribe. You can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. I even have my own website. Thank you, and have a nice day.